I met Alina at a seminar for young professionals just outside of Denver. It was one of those 3-day industry mixers filled with stale coffee, forced smiles, and padded lanyards with names we never looked at. I remember spotting her from across the room, burgundy blazer, heels a shade too bold for the conservative crowd, and a notepad already half filled before the keynote even started. I ended up sitting next to her during a breakout session. We didn't speak until lunch, and even then it was just small talk, until I made some offhand joke about how half the room looked like they were there for the free pens. She laughed harder than I expected. From that moment, I couldn't stop watching her. By the end of the weekend, we'd exchanged numbers and stood outside the hotel bar long after everyone else had gone inside. It felt easy. Natural. Like I didn't need to perform. She had this way of cutting through all the fluff and getting to the root of things. It was both sharp and comforting. 6 months later, we were dating. A year after that, I proposed. We've been married 9 years now. We live just outside Chicago in a quiet, well-kept neighborhood. Our house isn't extravagant, but it's the kind you notice: big bay windows, a stone pathway through the front garden, soft lighting in the evening that makes it feel like home before you even step inside. We have 2 kids. Maya is 7, and Liam just turned 5. Smart, curious, exhausting in the best ways. Alina's great with them. Patient, organized, present. She's the kind of mom who always has snacks in her bag and answers every why question like it deserves a real explanation. And they adore her. She works at one of the larger banks downtown, senior management now. She started on the ground floor, worked her way up. She's respected. Trusted. One of the few people who can manage big portfolios and still remember every assistant's birthday. She never brings the stress home, at least not visibly. And I always admired that. I run my own small logistics consultancy. Nothing massive, but steady. I make my own hours, take the kids to school most mornings, handle dinner a couple nights a week. It works for us. We've never kept score. If she had a deadline, I stepped in. If I had a client crisis, she covered. Balanced. Functional. Weekends are usually for family. Maya's in dance, Liam just started soccer. We rotate hosting dinners with friends, visit her parents every few weeks, take short weekend trips when we can. It's not glamorous, but it's solid. We're not chasing anything. We're building something. That's how it's always felt. We talk. We laugh. We know each other's rhythms. She finishes my sentences. I remember to warm up her coffee when she forgets it on the counter. If anyone asked, I'd say we're good. Better than good. Stable. Grounded. We had a rhythm. It wasn't dramatic or romanticized, just clean, steady, and consistent. I'd drop the kids off in the morning, and Alina would already be halfway through her first meeting by the time I got home. Her bank kept her busy, but she liked it that way. She thrived under pressure, and she always found a way to make the chaos look polished. Every morning before she left, she'd sit at the edge of the bed, hair still damp from the shower, scrolling through emails while sipping her first coffee. She never rushed, even when she was behind. She always looked like she was 5 minutes ahead of everyone else. Alina's schedule ran tight: meetings, reports, client calls, back-to-back appointments that left little room to breathe, but she always carved out time for the kids. She'd FaceTime during her lunch break just to say hi, ask about Maya's class pet or remind Liam to drink his water. And no matter how long her day had been, she made it home for bedtime more nights than not. She'd kick off her heels at the door and be on the floor with them before dinner even cooled. I handled the mornings. Lunch prep, school drop-offs, laundry rotations. I kept things light: goofy breakfast dances, half-burnt toast, backpack slung over one arm while I wiped syrup off someone's nose. It worked. I liked being the parent who could stay longer at pickup or sneak in a midday read aloud when Maya forgot her lunchbox. We were a team. We never had to remind each other what needed doing. It was just there, unspoken, seamless. Grocery runs. Parent-teacher meetings. Oil changes. We each took half without asking. Even our evenings had their rhythm. Once the kids were down, we'd meet in the kitchen for tea or a late glass of wine. Some nights we barely spoke, just sat in comfortable silence, scrolling side by side. Other nights, we talked through the day. She'd tell me about boardroom tension, a junior analyst who overshared during a client pitch, or some regulatory headache she had to navigate for the fourth time that week. I didn't understand the details, but I always listened. She loved structure. Everything in our home reflected that: clean lines, neutral tones, folders labeled in drawers most people forgot they had. Even our calendars synced. Every appointment, every recital, every late work night, scheduled, color-coded, accounted for. Our friends joked about how together we were. The organized ones. The functioning marriage. The dependable couple you could count on for school pickups, emergency babysitting, or hosting Sunday dinner without burning the roast. We laughed when they said it, but I secretly liked hearing it. I liked knowing people saw us that way, strong. Aligned. We had our fights, sure. Tired misunderstandings. Parenting disagreements. The occasional misstep around money. But nothing out of the ordinary. Nothing unkind. We never let arguments fester past a night. That was our rule. No cold shoulders. No leaving the house angry. Alina never broke that. She kissed me goodbye every morning. Held my hand when we walked into school events. Told me she loved me at the end of every call. And I never doubted it. Not once. Weekends were sacred. Every Saturday morning, we had a tradition: cinnamon rolls, cartoons, and pajamas until noon. The kids looked forward to it like it was a holiday every week. Alina, for all her weekday structure and composure, loosened up in those hours. She wore soft joggers and one of my old hoodies, her hair pulled into a lazy bun, face free of makeup. She looked real in those moments. Warm. That version of her wasn't for work, or for friends. It was for us. After breakfast, we'd split duties. I'd take Liam to soccer or the park, and Alina would run errands with Maya, groceries, errands, maybe a quick stop at the mall if Maya had managed to convince her she needed new glitter pens or hair clips. Sometimes they came home with iced coffees and matching nail polish, laughing about something I wasn't part of but didn't mind being outside of. They had their bond. So did I with Liam. Sundays were slower. We'd prep meals for the week, clean the house together, and let the kids play in the backyard. Alina loved to garden, even though she swore she had a black thumb. Our tomatoes died every year, but she kept trying. Said it wasn't about the harvest, just about growing something. Our marriage was full of that kind of thinking. Small, intentional acts that added up to a life. When she left her job at her first bank, it was a tough decision. She was offered the new position downtown, more responsibility, a bigger office, a team of her own. It was a step up. But I remember how she hesitated. "It's going to change things," she said. "I'll be busier. It'll be intense." I told her she should go for it. "I've got things here," I said. "We'll adapt." She looked at me like I'd just made the world easier. And for a while, we did adapt. Her hours grew longer, yes. She took on more travel, more reports, and her inbox never seemed to stop filling. But she stayed present. She made time. And when she missed something, a school function, a bedtime, she made up for it with intention. She didn't drift. I knew how hard she worked. I knew the sacrifices she made to be respected in a field that didn't always respect women in leadership. She didn't just survive in that environment, she excelled. I bragged about her to my friends more often than I probably should have. She was driven, composed, successful. She was someone people listened to when she spoke. And yet, when she came home, she shed that edge. She curled into our world like it was a place to exhale. She didn't bring the boardroom home. She brought her hands to the stove, her eyes to our children, her voice down to something softer. I never questioned whether she was with us, truly with us. I felt it in the little things. The notes in the kids' lunchboxes. The way she instinctively reached for my hand in parking lots. The warmth that never felt forced. We were the kind of couple people wanted to be around. And I was proud to be hers. There were pictures of us on the mantel, vacations, birthdays, holiday cards where we stood in front of the tree smiling like people who had it figured out. I used to glance at those photos and think, yeah. That's real. Nothing posed. Nothing fake. We built a life that made sense. People saw that. Friends leaned on us, not just socially, but emotionally. We'd become the couple who offered advice, who hosted when others couldn't, who showed up on time to parent-teacher conferences and volunteered at school fairs without flinching. If a neighbor had an emergency, they knocked on our door. If someone needed a last-minute babysitter, we were first call. Alina was great in those moments, always prepared, never frazzled. She was the mom who remembered every birthday and the colleague who never missed a deadline. I don't say that as flattery. I say it because it made me believe nothing could catch her off guard. She was in control, all the time. She kept our finances immaculate. Budget spreadsheets. Quarterly reviews. She didn't just manage our money, she respected it. Even though we made enough to live comfortably, she never let us get sloppy. She used points to book flights, kept track of every tax document, and even organized the kids' future college plans in a folder marked, just in case. That folder sits in the second drawer of the filing cabinet under our stairs. It's still there. I think about it sometimes. Maya's drawings are taped on the fridge, overlapping calendars, and chore charts. Liam's soccer cleats sit by the door even when they're clean, because that's where he always throws them. Our hallway still smells faintly like cinnamon in the evenings. It's all still here, all the habits and routines that once felt like security. And back then, that's exactly what they were. Alina would come home late some nights, but not without warning. She'd text when she was leaving the office, let me know if she'd eaten or wanted something heated up. I never felt abandoned or forgotten. Just, busy. We were both busy. That's what happens when you're building something real. She had friends from the old bank she stayed in touch with. Not many, just a few she occasionally grabbed coffee with or mentioned when something funny came up. One in particular she brought up a few times, Julian. He used to be on her team before the restructure. They'd worked together for years. She said he was sharp, loyal, kind of awkward. He was like a little brother, she'd said once. Used to bring me coffee when my days were hell. I never met him. Didn't think anything of it. Sometimes when she was in a good mood, she'd come up behind me while I was cooking, wrap her arms around my waist, and rest her chin on my shoulder. She'd tell me what Maya did at school, or laugh at something Liam said. She'd kiss my neck like it was just second nature. It felt effortless. That's what we had. Effortless trust. Reliable affection. A shared life that worked. It started with a slip. A detail she didn't quite get right. We were at the kitchen counter one evening, the kids already in bed, her laptop open beside a cup of lukewarm tea. I asked how her meeting went that afternoon, the one she mentioned earlier that day. She looked up, blinked like she hadn't expected the question, then said, "Oh, right. It ran long, but it was fine. Standard portfolio review." But here's the thing, that wasn't the meeting she told me about. Earlier that morning, she'd mentioned a compliance discussion with the regional manager, a meeting she'd been preparing for all week. She even reviewed the documents during breakfast. I didn't call her out. I just nodded and kept cleaning the counter. Maybe she'd forgotten. Maybe I got it wrong. But the thought lodged itself in the back of my mind like a tiny shard of glass. A few days later, we were out running errands together, just the two of us, which didn't happen often, and we stopped for coffee. She stepped outside to take a call, told me it was from the office. I didn't think anything of it until I heard her laugh through the glass, that particular laugh she used when she was totally relaxed, completely herself. When she came back in, I asked, "Work?" She nodded. "Jillian. From HR. She's losing it over a scheduling mix-up." Another moment. Another tiny pause before the answer. It wasn't the lie, if it even was one, that bothered me. It was the shift. The mental delay. The calculation before she spoke. That wasn't like her. Alina was sharp. She didn't forget which meeting she had or who she'd just spoken to. Her mind was like clockwork. So why the hesitation? Still, I said nothing. I wasn't going to interrogate my own wife over things that might have just been mental fatigue. Her job was high pressure. The workload had increased. Maybe she was just scattered. But once the idea enters your mind, the idea that something might be off, it becomes a lens you can't remove. That weekend, I noticed she checked her phone more than usual. Not obsessively. Just often enough that I caught it. She turned it face down every time. Not in a dramatic way, not like she was hiding something, just, casually. Like it was habit. When I brought it up, getting a lot of work texts lately. She didn't flinch. "End of quarter," she said. "Everything's on fire." And I believed her. Mostly. The next few days, I caught myself watching her more closely. Not with suspicion, not yet. Just attention. I paid more notice to how long she took to get home, to the tone in her voice when she told me about her day. I started reading her mood the way you'd read a weather app before leaving the house. One night after she went to bed, I opened the family calendar app, the one we both shared to coordinate schedules. Her entries were all there. Neat. Precise. But I noticed something strange. A 3-hour block on Thursday labeled, "Meeting, Offsite." She hadn't mentioned it. And Alina always mentioned things like that. I stared at it for a long time. Then closed the app. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. But something had shifted. Something I couldn't name yet, only feel. I started waking up earlier than usual. Not on purpose, just a sense of restlessness that settled in my chest before dawn. I'd get out of bed quietly, make coffee, and sit at the kitchen table listening to the house breathe. Alina always slept in on weekends. She earned it. But lately, she'd started waking earlier too, not with me, but about 30 minutes after I'd settled into my silence. She'd come down already dressed, hair tied up neatly, like she had somewhere to be. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked once. She shrugged. "Too much on my mind. I figured I'd get a jump on emails." But she didn't open her laptop. She scrolled on her phone for nearly an hour. Then disappeared into the study and shut the door. Little things. That's what it always is. She changed the password on her phone. I only noticed because the kids had been playing a game on it, and when I tried to help Maya log back in, it wouldn't unlock. Alina saw me struggling and gently took it out of my hands. "Oh, I updated my lock code," she said, like it was no big deal. "Too many people at work looking over my shoulder lately." I nodded. It made sense. Her bank handled sensitive information. But we'd never locked things from each other before. Not because we were checking, but because we never needed to. One evening, she left her email open on our shared desktop in the kitchen. I wasn't snooping. I went to print a receipt, and there it was, a short thread between her and someone named Julian. That name. I remembered it. The little brother from the old bank. The messages weren't inappropriate, at least not explicitly. But the tone was too warm. The kind of shorthand you don't use with someone you haven't seen in years unless there's history that's been recently reawakened. Things like, "God, that joke took me back. You always had the worst sense of humor. Don't start, you loved my bad jokes. Admit it." There were no details. No dates. But enough familiarity to stir something in me. That off-site meeting sheet had last Thursday suddenly felt louder in my memory. I closed the tab. Didn't bring it up. What would I even say? I saw a couple of harmless emails and I'm starting to feel paranoid. So I said nothing. Instead, I started watching how she reacted to me. There was a new type of patience in her tone. Like she was working harder to seem calm. She complimented me more often, laughed more quickly, touched my arm in passing like it was scripted. Everything was fine. Almost too fine. That's what made it strange. Alina didn't fake things. She didn't perform affection. Not before. And maybe she wasn't now. But it felt like something was being rehearsed, and I wasn't sure if it was for my sake, or hers. I've heard people say you can feel when something is wrong before you understand it. Like your body knows before your brain can form the words. That's where I was now. Half awake inside a life that didn't feel like mine anymore. I couldn't name it, still. There were no texts, no receipts, no lipstick on a collar. Just this constant low hum under everything, like feedback from a speaker that no one else could hear but me. Alina had become harder to track. Not in a controlling way, I'd never kept tabs on her. But her explanations had grown thinner, less detailed, less lived in. She used to tell me about her days in full color, the clients, the personalities, the little victories or frustrations. Now it was just meetings, or same stuff, different day. One Thursday evening, I asked if she wanted to grab dinner, just the two of us. I said it casually, but I meant it. I missed her. Missed us. We hadn't had a proper date in weeks. She hesitated for a second too long, then said, "I'd love to, but I already promised Jill I'd help her finalize some numbers after hours. It's a mess," and I sort of committed. I nodded. Rain check. "Definitely," she said, smiling. But she didn't meet my eyes. That night, after she left, I sat on the back porch with a beer and just stared into the dark. The kids were asleep. The house was quiet. But it didn't feel peaceful. It felt like I was sitting in a shell of something that used to hold warmth. I wondered if I was imagining it. If I'd let one harmless email, one changed password, spiral into suspicion. And then I wondered why the question even existed. Why the thought had room to grow. The next day, I picked her up from the train, her car was in the shop. As she walked toward me, I saw her stop mid-step and pull out her phone. She smiled at the screen. Really smiled. The kind of smile I hadn't seen her give me in weeks. Then her thumb tapped out a reply fast and she slipped the phone into her coat before getting in. I didn't ask who it was. She didn't say. We drove in silence for most of the ride. Later that night, she fell asleep on the couch. I sat beside her, watching the way her fingers twitched in dreams, how her chest rose in steady rhythm. I should have felt tenderness. I always had. But instead, I felt like I was watching a stranger in my home, wearing my wife's skin. It scared me. I still had no proof. No names. No event I could point to and say, that's when everything changed. But I knew something was happening. It wasn't just distance. It was absence. And I wasn't sure if she had drifted from us, or from herself. All I knew was that I had this aching need to ask a question I didn't know how to phrase. Because whatever she was carrying, she wasn't carrying it with me anymore. I got the call around 10:42 a.m. Alina's boss, Mr. Denton, the regional VP, left a message asking if I could stop by the bank headquarters that afternoon. He said it was about a discrepancy in the family insurance file, tied to our coverage. It wasn't unusual for them to ask for a spouse's signature or clarification, especially when policies updated mid-year. But something in his tone was strange. Too rehearsed. Like he was reading from a script written for something else entirely. I called back, asked if it was urgent. He said, "It's best we handle it today." So I went. The lobby was colder than usual. The receptionist smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Denton met me at the elevator himself. He shook my hand, thanked me for coming, and led me to a private conference room. He shut the door. There were no papers on the table. No insurance forms. Just a manila folder and a small black monitor already turned on. Denton didn't sit. He stayed standing, one hand resting on the back of the chair. "I want to be clear," he said, voice level. "I called you under a pretense because I didn't want to do this over the phone. You deserve to know what's been happening, not just at home, but inside my building." I didn't speak. I just waited. Then he pressed play. And the screen lit up. It was grainy, black and white, office security footage. Dated last Thursday. The timestamp flickered in the corner. I saw her first. Alina. Dressed for work, heels clicking down the hall. She paused outside an office, looked both ways, then opened the door. Then Julian appeared. The same man from the emails. The one she'd called her little brother. He stepped into the room behind her. She shut the door. There was no audio. There didn't need to be. 2 minutes later, the footage showed exactly what no one should ever see. Her hands. His mouth. A desk cleared just enough. And then both of them, entangled in a way that erased every version of the woman I thought I knew. The video lasted 7 minutes. I didn't ask to watch it again. I didn't even look at Denton. He slid the folder toward me. "Internal review is complete," he said quietly. "She's being terminated effective immediately. Company policy forbids any unauthorized individuals from entering secure areas." He never had clearance. She used her access to let him in. My throat felt like stone. He went on. "We're pursuing legal action against his employer. The fact that he works at a competing bank, and had unmonitored time near our confidential materials, raises a number of serious compliance concerns. Our legal team is treating this as espionage." I said nothing. Just nodded. He placed a hand on my shoulder, stiff, almost robotic, and said, "I'm sorry." I left without the folder. Without saying a word. Outside, the sun was too bright. My phone buzzed twice in my pocket. It was Alina. I didn't answer. I just walked to my car, sat down, and stared at the wheel for 10 full minutes. The truth wasn't a confrontation. It wasn't a confession. It was a recording. Played to me by her boss. In a boardroom. With the door closed. I didn't go home right away. I drove around the city for almost 2 hours, watching buildings blur through the windshield. I didn't listen to music. I didn't call anyone. I just kept thinking, she let him into her office. Into her world. Into the place she built with me beside her every step of the way. And she did it like it cost nothing. By the time I walked through our front door, Alina was already there. Sitting at the dining table like it was any other day. She looked up from her laptop and smiled. "Hey. Don't," I said. She froze. I dropped my keys on the counter and stared at her. "You had those unacceptable things with Julian in your office." "Multiple times." I saw the footage. Color drained from her face. "I don't," she started, but there was nothing behind her voice. Not even a defense. Just the brittle sound of someone who knew she'd been caught in full clarity. I walked straight to the bedroom and started pulling down her suitcase. Wait, can we just talk, please? You're fired, I said, loud enough to stop her mid-step. You know that, right? Denton made it official this morning. You've been terminated for misconduct and for allowing an unauthorized person into a secure workspace. She stepped back. Her hand covered her mouth. I could see the panic rise. But I didn't care. He's suing Julian's bank, I added, turning back to her. Corporate espionage. Claims he accessed sensitive files while you were too busy screwing him to notice. That's not, he didn't touch anything. Doesn't matter. There's footage. There's precedent. There are lawyers with sharp teeth and enough evidence to turn suspicion into a headline. I pulled her suitcase down hard and dropped it on the bed. Start packing. She didn't move. Now, Alina. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't feel sympathy. I felt fury. Grief. Shame. And underneath it all, a steel core I didn't know I had. That night, I called her parents. Told them everything. I didn't sugarcoat it. She was screwing her old colleague at work. On video. During office hours. She's done. They were silent. Her father muttered something about deep disappointment. Her mother started crying. I hung up. The next morning, I met with Denton again, this time with my lawyer present. We discussed the case against Julian's employer. I provided additional evidence from our shared accounts. He'd taken her out multiple times on their corporate card. Technically, she'd used her employer's resources to entertain a competitive agent. My lawyer smiled. That's all we need. By the end of the week, Julian's bank froze his access. Internal review followed. When it was confirmed he'd entered another bank's premises under false pretense, even without directly handling files, it was enough. He was arrested within the month for breach of financial confidentiality and corporate misconduct. The story hit trade media hard. The bank collapsed under the weight of the scandal. Clients pulled out. Trust vaporized. They folded by the end of the quarter. Alina tried reaching out, emails, long texts, voicemails I never listened to. I didn't block her. I let them pile up. So she'd know the silence wasn't an accident. It was earned. The house was too quiet after she left. Not peaceful, just hollow. Like everything that once filled the air had been sucked out in one long, silent breath. The kids stayed with my sister that first week. I couldn't bear the idea of explaining it to them while I was still unraveling myself. They were too young to understand what Alina had done, and too smart not to notice something had broken. I needed time to clean up the blood before showing them the wound. I moved through the house like a stranger. Each room felt like an echo of something I couldn't name. Her tea mug still sat by the sink. Her robe hung limp behind the bathroom door. Our bed, my bed now, smelled faintly of her shampoo no matter how many times I changed the sheets. The worst was the study. She had a small desk in the corner with everything arranged just so, pens in a glass jar, bank folders lined up like soldiers, a photo of us with the kids from 2 summers ago taped to the wall. We were standing in the ocean, all 4 of us soaked and laughing. I took it down. Not angrily. Just, because I couldn't look at it anymore. People started texting again. Friends. Colleagues. Some had heard rumors, others were checking in out of genuine concern. I ignored most of them. I wasn't ready to give anyone the polished version. I wasn't even sure I believed my own yet. My lawyer updated me on Julian's case. He'd been officially terminated, his professional license suspended, and formal charges were moving forward. His name was public now. The story had hit financial news outlets and spread like gasoline fire. I saw one article titled, "Espionage, Secrets, and Collapse, the Affair That Sank a Regional Bank." He was done. So was she. Her career was untouchable now. No institution would hire someone who violated confidentiality and allowed a competitor into a locked building, especially when it involved an affair. The scandal wasn't just personal. It was policy-breaking. Trust-breaking. She sent one final message, a voice note I didn't listen to. I deleted it without pressing play. Some things don't need to be heard. By the third week, the silence started to shift. Not into comfort, but into something useful. I cleaned the study. Boxed up the last of her things. Cleared out the closets. I had no interest in keeping reminders. I printed out the divorce papers and left them in a folder by the door for when her lawyer finally got back to mine. The terms were clear. She wasn't getting the house. Not after everything she brought through the door. The kids came home eventually. I told them Mom had moved out, and that grown-up things had happened that we'd explain when they were older. Maya looked at me too long before nodding. Liam just hugged my leg and asked if he could watch cartoons. That night, I lay in bed alone, no phone in hand, no noise in the background, and for the first time in weeks, I slept. Not deeply. But without flinching. It's been 5 months. The house feels different now, not haunted, just quiet in a way that makes sense. The kids have adapted faster than I expected. Maya stopped asking when Mom was coming back after the 3rd week. Liam still gets quiet during bedtime stories, like he's waiting for a voice that isn't mine. But we're okay. Better than okay. We're honest now. I didn't rebuild everything overnight. At first, I just lived inside the wreckage. Let it press in around me until the sharp edges dulled. I didn't rush to redecorate, or rearrange furniture, or fill the space she left. I wanted to understand what silence sounded like when it wasn't laced with suspicion. I don't check my phone compulsively anymore. I don't listen for keys in the door. I don't scan calendars for entries I didn't make. My days are my own again. I picked up more clients. More hours. I like being busy, not as a distraction, but as proof that I can keep moving. I hired a sitter for afternoons when I'm buried, and I set strict hours when I shut everything off to be with the kids. They deserve that. I do too. Alina never tried to fight the divorce. She signed what needed signing. Her lawyer sent over one half-hearted request to split assets differently. Mine replied with a 3-sentence rebuttal that shut it down completely. She didn't push back. She knows what she lost. Her name faded from public view after the lawsuit wrapped. Julian pled out. The court agreed not to press heavier charges in exchange for a financial penalty and a permanent industry ban. His career is dead. The bank he worked for is dissolving in real time, mergers, sell-offs, PR damage control. It's all noise to me now. Some nights I still feel the sting. Not because I miss her, but because I can't believe how completely she threw it away. For what? Nostalgia? Power? Excitement? I'll never really know, and I've stopped needing to. I met someone last week. Nothing serious, just conversation. She asked about the photo in my wallet, the one with my kids on the beach, and I told her the truth. I'm a single dad. Their mom made a choice that ended things. She nodded, didn't flinch. Said, "That's not your failure." I think I needed to hear that more than I realized. I'm not rushing anything. I'm not chasing some new fairy tale to fix the one that collapsed. I'm just showing up. For myself. For Maya. For Liam. For the version of me that didn't deserve to be betrayed and broken behind a locked office door. The truth is, I didn't just lose my wife. I lost the man I used to be when I trusted without hesitation. And now I'm figuring out who I am without her shadow cast across my home. Every morning, I wake up to my alarm, not hers. I open the blinds, not because someone else wants the light, but because I do. I make breakfast while the kids argue over cereal boxes, and I smile because that noise means life. Movement. Something unshattered. I don't hate her anymore. But I don't miss her either. And that's what healing actually looks like.